Welcome back to our channel for your daily dose of Port Charles drama. Today is a fantastic day to dive deep into the explosive secrets threatening to tear our favorite families apart. We have some monumental updates and jaw-dropping predictions regarding the highly anticipated return of Jason and the catastrophic fallout awaiting his loved one. Let us get straight into the action. Jason has finally returned to Port Charles, but the man who walked out of that hellish WSB black site in Jakarta is fundamentally changed. The physical scars may eventually heal, but the emotional shockwaves of his imprisonment are about to collide violently with the people he loves most. The biggest bombshell waiting for him is not a rival mob boss or a rogue WSB agent, but a ticking time bomb inside his own family. Rocco Falconeri, the teenager who actually pulled the trigger on Ross Cullum, is suffocating under the weight of his guilt, while Danny is practically vibrating with blood-boiling rage. Get ready for a monumental showdown that pits cousin against cousin and forces Jason to make the most agonizing choice of his life. The fragile peace Jason fought so hard to secure is about to be ripped to shreds by the very people he sacrificed everything to. The upcoming scenes between Jason and Rocco are guaranteed to be some of the most intense, tear-jerking moments of the. Rocco has been living a waking nightmare, knowing that the legendary enforcer endured unspeakable torture in a Jakarta prison simply to protect him from the consequences of a single, panicked gunshot. When Jason and Rocco finally come face to face in secrecy, expect the emotional floodgates to burst wide open. Rocco is completely paralyzed by remorse, ready to throw himself at Jason's mercy and beg for forgiveness. He sees the physical toll the black site took on Jason, and every bruise, every hardened stare feels like a jagged dagger to the teenager's. Rocco is fully prepared to march straight into the PCPD and confess to everything, believing that sacrificing his own freedom is the only way to balance the scales and right this horrific wrong. But Jason does not operate by the standard rules of justice, and his reaction will leave Rocco absolutely stunned. Instead of anger, blame, or resentment, Jason is going to deliver a profound, life-altering directive to the young Falconeri. Picture the scene. Jason gripping Rocco firmly by the shoulders, his intense eyes piercing right through the teenager's frantic. Jason will gently but firmly command Rocco to bury the guilt forever. He will explicitly tell Rocco that he took the fall for a specific reason, and that reason was to give Rocco a second chance at a clean, honorable life. Jason will demand that Rocco stay far away from the violence, the guns, and the darkness that has consumed the Corinthos and Morgan families for decades. Jason's ultimate sacrifice was deliberately designed to break the cycle of violence, and he fully expects Rocco to honor that sacrifice by living a good life and never looking back. If Jason thinks his noble sacrifice will quietly settle the dust and close this dark chapter, he is dead wrong. Enter Danny. Danny is a walking powder keg waiting for a spark, and his father's miraculous return is the ultimate catalyst for an explosion. Danny knows the explosive truth about who really shot Ross Cullum, and he absolutely refuses to accept this code of silence. While Jason wants to sweep the crime under the rug to protect Rocco's future, Danny is consumed by a burning, relentless need for absolute justice. Danny had to watch his father disappear into the terrifying void of a WSB black site, not knowing if Jason was dead or alive, all because Rocco could not handle it. Danny's rage is not just about the law, it is about the agonizing pain his family endured while Rocco walked free and lived a comfortable life in Port Charles. The impending clash between Danny and Rocco is going to be a spectacular, high-stakes collision that will shake the foundation of their family. We are predicting a violent, screaming confrontation where Danny corners Rocco in an isolated location and unleashes months of pent-up fury. Danny will relentlessly pressure Rocco to march into the police station and confess to the. He will absolutely not accept Jason's martyrdom. Danny will look Rocco dead in the eye and demand that he take full responsibility for his own reckless action. Expect Danny to hurl brutal accusations, calling Rocco a coward for letting Jason rot in a Jakarta hellhole while he hid behind a lie. The physical tension in this scene will be completely off the charts, with Danny ready to tear Rocco apart with his bare hands if the Falconeri teenager refuses to step up and clear Jason's name completely. This terrifying dynamic places Jason in an incredibly volatile, agonizing position. The man who can take down entire crime syndicates without breaking a sweat is now trapped between two furious, unpredictable teenagers. On one side, he has Rocco, a vulnerable kid he swore to protect, a kid who is desperately trying to follow Jason's orders and move on from the worst mistake of his life. On the other side, he has his own flesh and blood, Danny, who is fighting a desperate, aggressive crusade to vindicate his father. Jason must step directly into the line of fire between the two boys. He will have to physically separate them, using his imposing presence to shut down the escalating violence before someone gets seriously hurt. But how do you reason with a son who is fighting so fiercely for your honor? The psychological warfare in these upcoming episodes will be absolutely riveting to watch. Jason is returning to Port Charles with a newfound desire for peace and stability. The trauma of the black site has drastically shifted his priorities. He no longer wants to be the blunt instrument of mob vengeance. He wants to build a quiet, stable life away from the constant threat of death or imprisonment. But Danny's relentless pursuit of justice threatens to drag Jason right back into the chaotic spotlight. Jason will have to sit Danny down and deliver some harsh, uncompromising truths about the real world. He will try to explain that clearing his name is not worth destroying Rocco's entire. Jason will argue that true strength sometimes means carrying a massive burden in silence so that someone else can walk free, a lesson Danny is entirely unwilling to learn. However, Danny is not going to simply nod, obey, and walk away. Danny has inherited the stubborn, relentless, fiercely loyal drive of his parents, and he is not going to let this injustice stand. We predict that Danny will actively rebel against Jason's explicit wishes, setting the stage for a massive father-son fight. If Rocco refuses to confess, Danny might take matters into his own hands and blow the whistle himself. Could Danny go straight to Dante Falconeri and expose the entire cover-up? Imagine the catastrophic fallout if Dante learns that his own son shot a WSB director and that Jason took the fall to hide it. Dante represents the law, and this devastating revelation would tear him apart, forcing him to choose between his badge and his... Danny currently holds the detonator to this explosive secret, and his finger is hovering dangerously close to the button. The stakes are infinitely higher than a simple internal family dispute. The WSB is still lurking in the shadows, and they do not forgive or forget crimes against their director. If the truth about Ross Cullum's shooting leaks out, it will not just be the Port Charles Police Department knocking on their doors. The WSB will descend on Port Charles with ruthless efficiency and unlimited resources. Jason's delicate freedom, which was secured by Jocelyn Jacks's massive deal with Director Z, could be entirely revoked in an instant. If Z learns that Jason was covering for a teenager and that the WSB was played for fools, the entire agreement could collapse, sending Jason right back to a black site and putting Rocco directly in the crosshairs of international intelligence agents. The fragile peace Jason is trying to build is currently balanced on the edge of a razor. Meanwhile, Rocco is rapidly approaching his absolute breaking point. Carrying a secret of this magnitude is actively destroying him from the inside out. Even with Jason explicitly forgiving him and forbidding him from confessing, Rocco's conscience is bleeding out. Every single time he looks at Jason, every time he faces Danny's blistering, hate-filled accusations, the guilt multiplies exponentially. We expect to see Rocco completely spiral out of control in the coming weeks. He might start acting out, intentionally sabotaging his own life because he feels he does not deserve the incredible second chance Jason gave him. The psychological pressure cooker is going to force Rocco into a terrifying corner, and when a teenager is pushed into a corner with no way out, they make desperate, highly unpredictable moves. The ripple effect of this toxic secret will inevitably touch every major power player in Port Charles. Sonny Corinthos is already scrambling to maintain his territory against Jen Sidwell, and the absolute last thing he needs is an internal family war tearing his syndicate apart from the... Sonny will inevitably find out about the escalating tension between Danny and... How will the legendary mob boss react to this crisis? Sonny respects Jason's choices above all else, but he also fiercely protects his bloodline and demands absolute loyalty. If Danny goes rogue and threatens the stability of the entire family structure, Sonny might be forced to intervene directly. Sonny could try to intimidate Danny into silence, which would only fuel the teenager's rebellion and drive a massive, unfixable wedge between Sonny and Jason. Jason is going to realize very quickly that his silence is no longer a protective shield. It is a live weapon that is actively destroying his... The famously stoic enforcer will experience a rare, terrifying moment of pure desperation. He survived the physical and psychological torture of Jakarta, but watching his son tear himself apart with rage is a completely different kind of agony. Jason will have to pull out all the stops to contain the radioactive fallout of this secret. He might even consider taking drastic, unprecedented measures to remove Danny from the situation, perhaps trying to send him out of Port Charles entirely to force him to cool down. But Danny is far too smart, too resourceful, and too determined to be easily sidelined. The collision course is firmly locked in, and Jason is rapidly running out of options to prevent a total catastrophe. We are predicting a massive, show-stopping climax to this storyline that will leave viewers completely breathless. Danny is going to issue a terrifying, non-negotiable ultimatum to Rocco. He will give his cousin a strict impending deadline. Either Rocco walks into the police station and tells the absolute truth on his own terms, or Danny will do it for him and burn everything to the ground. This ultimatum will force Jason to make an impossible, heart-wrenching choice. Does he physically stop his own son from revealing the truth, potentially destroying their relationship forever to protect a secret? Or does he stand aside and watch Rocco's life go up in flames, rendering his entire agonizing sacrifice in Jakarta completely meaningless? The tension will be suffocating, the dialogue will be razor sharp, and the performances will be absolutely phenomenal. The clock is ticking down, and the explosive secret of Ross Cullum's shooting is about to detonate right in the middle of Port Charles. Every single move Jason makes to protect Rocco only pushes Danny further into a blind, unstoppable rage. The fragile piece Jason fought so desperately hard to secure is crumbling before his very eyes, and the collateral damage will be immeasurable. Will Danny pull the trigger on the ultimate betrayal and expose his own cousin to the authorities? Will Rocco crack under the unbearable weight of his guilt and confess before Danny gets a chance to ruin him? Or will Jason find a shocking, unthinkable third option to save them both before the WSB rains hellfire down on their family? Drop your predictions below, because this showdown is going to change everything.